welcome everybody. Thanks for coming. Here, hopefully, to give you some live demos. We haven't seen many live demos.
That's because people have learned.
Yeah, I have videos as well, don't I? You don't want to see the videos I've got. So, here to talk about deployment of Citrix XenDesktop via PowerShell Desired State Configuration. It was going to include remote desktop services, but one, due to time, it's been cut out, and two, Nicholas is covering sessions. We've got a session tomorrow around deploying RDS and PowerShell Desired State Configuration tomorrow as well. So, please dig into that session for more of an RDS-centric approach. So, this is what we're going to cover. You have a quick look into desired state, whatever it's called. What does it mean? How does it work briefly? I'm not going to cover PowerShell DSC in any great depth today.
That's what I was here for, damn it.
They didn't say you were coming, so they said keep it simple. So we're going to have a quick look at Microsoft RDS and DSC, then we're going to look into Citrix and DSC, what is out there, what works, etc. And then give you a quick demo, hopefully, of deploying a complete XenDesktop infrastructure with some caveats in approximately 10 minutes from scratch. Yeah. If that goes wrong, we've got a video, so you can all come and watch that. Then have a quick wrap up and any questions. If you've got any questions during the talk, then please ask them. I have beer.
Let's decide to take.
Yeah, you jumping the gun. So there is free beer. Yeah. So ask your questions and you get beer. Any questions?
What kind of beer is it?
I knew it would be you. There's a reason you sat down the front. Cool. So,
do you have any ginger ale?
No, I'll buy you one afterwards. I can't.
Yeah, it's the big bottles. That's
So that's me. I'm Ian Brighton. Work for Virtual in the UK. We're a consulting company focused around the RES suite. Spend a lot of my time automating. Hence why I do a lot of work with PowerShell and ended up in that disaster configuration. So we as an organisation release free tools to the community. We also do some free AppV tools. So there's the AppV configuration editor, or ACE we call it, which Nathan is primary developer, he's over there. If you've got any questions around AppV deployment. And we also, the other week, or last week, released an AppV PowerShell package management one-get provider as well. So that's free, that's open source, you can know about that. Yeah. Primarily spend my time automating stuff in the end-user compute environment. So when we're talking about PowerShell Desired State Configuration, you mention this to customers and people and they go, what is PowerShell Desired State Configuration? This is pulled from Microsoft's website. So you go to the DSC overview page, this is what they give you as an answer, or the introduction to what PowerShell Desired State Configuration is. And I'm none the wiser. Not having read that, it's a new management platform that enables deploying and managing configuration data for software services. What does that mean? So breaking it down, what is PowerShell Desired State Configuration? It is a standards-based configuration document that you can author with PowerShell. It can be authored by any system that can write text files. Okay, so at the end of the day, PowerShell Desired State Configuration takes these MOF documents, which are ultimately just text documents. Where they come from, there's no consequence. We can author them with PowerShell, but if you're using any of the configuration management tools, so if you're using Chef or Puppet or whatever it happens to be, Azure presumably, you might be able to author some of these in the future. Okay, and we can drop that decorative configuration document on a node. Okay. And that configuration document defines, ultimately, the state that you want that machine to be in. That's cool. Yeah. Okay, it's a decorative document. It's not an imperative document, so there is no implementation details within it. So you say, for argument's sake, I would like a Citrix XenDesktop 7 delivery controller on that machine. You state that and you give it, the parameters that you would like it to have. You don't define how that gets installed. Or how it gets configured. It's just flipping on its head. PowerShell is not required. The bit that does the doing are these idempotent resources, and as someone mentioned to me last week, it sounds like some old man disease.
Isn't that what you take Viagra for?
Yeah, absolutely. I wouldn't know, sorry. So, idempotent means on a mathematical operation, if you reapply the equation, you end up with the same result, the same effect. Yeah, so you can reapply the configuration using PowerShell desired state configuration. It's idempotent. If it doesn't need changing, it's not going to change it. If it steps out, it's going to change the bits back that you have defined. Okay. So this is kind of a new management paradigm, and deploying and using desired state configuration or any configuration management tools in your environment requires you to change the way that you manage your systems. Okay, so what we're going to see here is something that has a lot of potential. There are a lot of holes and things within the product, bits that need filling. That management stack, ultimately is going to mature and get a lot better. So why would we use a declarative document that defines the state that we would like to have our environment in? It's just a document. This document can be authored manually if you really wanted to, it doesn't have to be. It's a document, it's great for living in source control and for version control. So I can define a configuration document that says this is the state. If I want to make a change to my environment, I make a change to my configuration document, and I can check that into source control, I can version control it, and I can then take that document through the deployment lifecycle, if you will, deployment pipeline, so I can take exactly the same configuration document from my environment through UAT, through test, and into production. And of course, it's just a text document.
So this sounds like a more grown-up version of what's in SCCM.
Yeah, I'm not an SCCM expert, but I would imagine that in the new versions, that DSC is going to become that configuration management piece within System Center. What happens to System Center with Azure in the cloud and on premises and all that sort of stuff. Absolutely. Jeffrey Snover, who's the head of the PowerShell team, also looks after the System Center team now.
Okay.
So it wouldn't surprise me that those two are going to merge. Yeah? No?
You can give it to him.
No, I'm not giving him another. So we have...
What about finish this one?
Oh, yeah. Do you want a straw with it? So we have within our configuration... Sorry, another question.
Yeah, just one. Under the hood, what is the Windows component responsible for actually enforcing? Because there's an enforcement mode, right, where you can tell it to apply. Do you know what the component actually is?
Yeah, so the question is what is the component on a Windows box that applies effectively to this document? So on a Windows PowerShell or Windows PowerShell version 4 machine where desired state configuration was introduced, there is a local configuration manager that is responsible for taking that configuration document and applying it. And it can do it, you can configure that configuration manager in multiple ways. It's using WMI, so it is within WMI ultimately. So if you want to restart DSC, you restart WMI. It's just...
So if this is one declarative document, do you have to have different documents for different machines because they've got different unique stuff within them?
Yes,
So-
essentially, yes.
So is there a way to take the document to say, I want to have one, I don't want to edit if I've got 500 things to manage, I don't want to edit 500 documents, right?
Yeah, so that's that authoring phase. So I can have a configuration document that spits out a MOF file for each of my VMs, effectively.
Okay.
That MOF is particular to that machine. There is a notion of, I don't want to get too deep, but you can configure a pull service. You can give, in version 4, you can give a Windows machine a configuration ID that says, go and pull this configuration. So if you had like a Webscale farm and you wanted all of your nodes to be configured exactly the same, then you can configure it to go and pull that one configuration. You update that one configuration and all your nodes are going to pull it. In version 5, they are introducing I can't remember what it's called now. Gone blank. Partial configurations. So you can configure the LCM on a Windows machine. It says, for argument's sake, for my standard Windows OS configuration.
LCM. What's LCM?
Local configuration manager. Yeah. So you configure the local configuration manager on the machine to say, go and pull your standard Windows configuration information from over here, and then you might have a network security team that define the configuration for the network stack and all the rest of it, go and pull that information from over there. So you can start to break up that roles and responsibilities and have different configurations coming from different places. That's version 5 feature, which obviously is now. So I think the primary reason that we would use DSC, or we will look to use DSC, is Windows native. So it's included with PowerShell 4, so in 2012 R2 Windows 8 onwards, it is installed as part of the operating system, it's available down level. As long as you've got PowerShell 4 on it, then you have the local configuration manager, DSC. If you drop a configuration document on there and configure the local configuration manager, it will apply. And the fact that the resources are idempotent, it actually handles reboots really well. Because it will apply the configuration document. So far, if it needs a reboot, it will reboot, and then when the machine comes back up, the local configuration manager will start at the top. And because they're idempotent resources, what is the configuration? It's correct, move on to the next one, move on. And then when I got down to the bit that broke, or needed a reboot, it will then carry on. So, taking a step back, why do we as an organisation internally looking at using DSC to deploy ultimately our environment? Well, one I mentioned is Windows native. This is really important to us. So we spend a lot of time in AWS. So we have, when we deliver our RES training, it's all delivered on AWS. If we wanted to move to Azure, we've got a bit of a problem. Because those VMs that we've got, they're handcrafted, right? They've been handcrafted over many years. If I wanted to move those VMs and move them to Azure, we've got a bit of a problem. We could run through different conversions. But what about, we have a requirement, we develop software, sort of, part-time, to be able to spin up a XenDesktop environment. I may want to have 2012 R2, I may want XenDesktop 7.5 with RES Workspace Manager 2012 SR4. And then tomorrow I might need a completely different environment. So wouldn't it be nice to say, here's my configuration for, in a document, I want these machines, I want these roles, and I want these parameters, and just drop it on these machines and they go and make it happen. I want to redeploy a new lab, or deploy a lab on Azure. Wouldn't it be nice to spin the VMs up, drop the configuration document on, and then just yes. I can see the wheels turning. And
yeah. So are you saying that if you've got a server that's got a certain role and it's been applied via a MOF file, and you drop a different MOF file on there,
it will reapply whatever that new configuration document is?
Yeah, but idempotent means it doesn't change stuff, it just sets stuff, right?
And if it moves out of drift, it will put it back.
Yeah. So will it uninstall the previous configuration?
No. In that scenario, no, it won't. So if I had a configuration that installed a Windows feature, as an example, and then I dropped a different configuration on, that installed a different, it wouldn't uninstall the original feature. If I wanted to do that, I'd update my configuration to say uninstall that. I don't want that feature on the box, and then the configuration will say, oh, you don't want that, and then it will do the uninstall, depending on whatever the resource is. Whether it might just be removing registry keys, deleting folders, or kicking an MSI off. Whatever.
So you have to explicitly program it.
Yes, you need to explicitly tell the configure. You have to explicitly say in the configuration, I do not want. If somebody goes and installs Windows features, the next time the consistency check comes around, it will uninstall it.
Yes, that was my question. How do you handle conflicts between different
Documents.
Yes.
Well, in version 4, you can only have one.
No, that solves it.
And in WMF 5, so the new preview, is it doesn't handle them at all. You've got to make sure that you don't, in your configuration authoring phase, don't create.
Because this is the approach like packaging, right? You FinApp or whatever technology, use it, never bother it again, just set up next finish. All the crap is in there, and it's theory versus reality.
Yeah.
If we're going to have multiple of these, one guy is going to fuck up the previous one, or the next one, or...
Yeah. Hence the version control and all that. It's a document, text document, right? And it's beautiful for documenting the existing configuration of your environment. If you define and declare your environment in a configuration document,
No, because you're declaring the settings that you want. It's not documenting the existing state. It's documenting what you intend it to be.
yes,
Yeah, you can create, if I'm understanding right, you can create them off from an existing server. So you can actually create a documented standard server and then use that to produce other servers.
no, we can't. So that moth's got to come from somewhere.
So we come from the document, right, that
Yeah.
you've written. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's self-documenting in the way that this is the stuff that I've written, this is stuff that I want it to be. You can look at this doc if you can understand it,
Yes, no, you did, yeah.
yeah? But it's not documenting the actual state of the thing.
It's documenting the bits that you're interested in. Now, this is that whole management paradigm shift, right? If you build your environment in PowerShell DSC, yeah, and you rebuild your dev, UAT, test environments every day from scratch, from a configuration document, you know the exact state of your environment. Yeah? Now, if you introduce PowerShell DSC into a brownfield deployment, you've got an issue, right? You don't actually know what the configuration of your environment is. And this is that whole mindset change. You know, and DSC is great for some things, it's not great for others. You're not going to be managing, users in Active Directory with this, right? You're not going to have to create a configuration document to create a user or update an AD. You could do. You might do for testing environments. So these are our requirements. So we needed to be able to spin up lab environments, dev environments, now that include RDS, the Citrix XenDesktop. So Microsoft do make available some DSC resources, and these are the bits that do the actual work on the device. So you need to make sure the resources are on the machine that is going to be implementing the configuration document you can drop on. Microsoft now open source these, so you can now go and contribute to these as well. So if they don't do what you need to do, you can go and contribute those changes back into GitHub and stuff. There is another resource by Nicholas, open source, deploying RDS, again, up on GitHub. Yeah. But this is based on PowerShell classes which are new in WMF5, so if you want to look at using those resources, then you do need to make sure you're running PowerShell 5 on the machines. So Nicholas is going to cover the RDS stuff in more detail. I may, hopefully, maybe a bit more of the actual configuration, authoring phase. Yeah, you going to do that? Yeah. Yeah. So more of the detail. For Citrix provide us with a DSC resource. Notice I said a resource. So there is one Citrix resource that you can go. You can download. You know what you need to sign in. All it does is install the Citrix XenDesktop role. So you can say, I want the controller install, and it will install the controller role. That's it. Or install storefront, or whatever. So obviously that is not what we need as an organisation. We need to be able to deploy, create databases, set up a site, add controllers to sites. What about adding RDS session hosts? What about deploying the VDA and configuring the VDA and all that sort of stuff? So, off to the back cave we went. And tried to come up with some resources, and this actually turned out to be a lot bigger issue than I thought it was going to be. I thought it'd be fairly straightforward. Yeah. Until I run into this, there's a lot of commandments to XenDesktop. Yeah. And in effect, we need to, but in effect, we need to map each of those commandlets or what they're trying to do to DSC resources. So there is there's a set broker desktop group that you can configure various settings on a delivery group. For us to be able to write a configuration document that then goes and makes it so and does what it needs to do, we need to have a resource to do that. So when I looked at this, I thought, oh my God. So focus on what we need to do.
So do you need to cover all of those 640 commandments, or could you just write a DSC document that only covers 50 of those?
Yeah. So, but the resource.
So why didn't you do that?
I haven't done all of them. And then I looked into storefront because I thought, well, we've automated the deployment of XenDesktop. That's fine. Now I need to configure storefront, and I nearly fell off my chair. Yeah, painful is not the word, right? So, you know, in this deployment that we've got, it will install storefront, but it doesn't currently do the configuration. But yes, we've come up with commandlets that will do, I think there's 16 of them or something, that will, you know, configure, create a XenDesktop site, create a database, add a controller in, create delivery group, you know, machine catalog, that sort of stuff.
So here's the pain, right? If you've implemented the 614 commandlets for 7.0,
And
then when
since you can't change it,
7.1 comes out, you need to check if those 614 still exist, if they've been added new,
yeah,
if they've been added
indeed.
changes.
And they are fairly
Then
good.
7.1
XenDesktop
comes,
7.
7.5, 7.6, 7.7.
And then you quit.
So we need an automated way to go from A to B.
Yes. But fortunately, the commandlets are pretty consistent from XenDesktop 7 through 7.6.
Yes, but can you depend
But
on
not
them
from 560.
being and staying?
Now, can I depend on Citrix? No. Not at all. Never ever.
And that's the 614 documented
Citrix.
commandments.
Oh, no, they're actual, yeah.
There's probably 6,000, right? Because we know they document no more than 10%.
And they've got some camels doing that, apparently.
It must have been you.
So,
Big ass.
so we need to come up with this, and it's like, oh my God, what's going on here? Now, it gets even more interesting. The local configuration manager that runs on the local machine runs under the local system context. Yes.
I was gonna say, also, unfortunately, the storefront commandlets don't support remote execution. So you can't say, like, on a XenDesktop commandlet, run this commandlet against this broker. Yeah, storefront, no, you
Yeah, it's a
can't.
nightmare.
No.
And, I did think, well, you know, there's no point doing it, you know, storefront X1's out, you know, trying to convince myself that I didn't need to do it. So I'm waiting for storefront 3 or whatever it is. Presumably the commandlets aren't going to change even though they're broken. But this is a real problem. So DSC, the local configuration manager, runs under the local system account. Has anyone ever tried running any of the Citrix commandlets under the local system account? Okay. It says, no, you've got to run under the domain account. I don't know why. I think that's, for some operations I can understand it. But it has to run under the domain admin account. You know? So, let's impersonate. You know, let's fire up the process, let's run as a domain account, and then run whatever we need to do. What's the only account that can't impersonate? Due to security reasons? Local system. Yeah. So we run around and around all of this kind of, you know, they don't have credential parameters on the new commandlets. It's like, well, what do we do? I don't know whether Nicholas is going to cover some of this in his session tomorrow, but we're talking CredSSP at this moment in time. So the credential delegation. So I can, if I run a process on a remote machine, I can't then spawn another process that then carries on. You know, it stops there. So if you want to allow the delegation of credentials further down the line, then you need to configure CredSSP. So you need to explicitly state which machines can delegate which credentials onto which other machines as well. So to configure and deploy XenDesktop, we need to configure CredSSP. Because we don't have a credential parameter, because we can't run on the local system and we can't impersonate, in effect I have to create a remote connection out of the machine back in under a different credential. But now if I then want to go and talk to a database server or talk to a delivery controller, that's the second hop, right? I'm blocked. Hence why I need to have CredSSP. So, this is that think big, start small, really tiny, try and be fast. So we have released up on GitHub, there is some new Citrix resources that are up there. So there's new 16 targeted DSC resources, and this one I'm going to show you to deploy XenDesktop. It should work on XenDesktop 7.1 or 7.0 and upwards. I haven't tested it, I just haven't had time. Lots of feedback, you've got it. They should be PowerShell 5 compatible. PowerShell 5 solves a lot of these issues because they introduce a new attribute on the local, well, the resources, so you can specify credential that the actual resources run under, so you can get around a lot of these issues that I've had. And there are some composite resources as well, which hide some of them or mask some of the complexities. Yeah. So let's kick this off. This is going to take 10 minutes or so. Right, we ready? Cool. So what we have here is, I'm just kicking the deployment off. It's asking for credentials. So it's going to take roughly 10 minutes for this to deploy in the background, so we'll come back onto it in a second. So I just wanted to kick it off and before I dig into what's going on here. So this is what we currently have. So in the lab environment that's running on a little MUC box on the floor down there. We have a domain controller, there's a database server, there's a license server. We've got 2 RDS session hosts. We did have 2 storefronts, but due to the complexities of deploying storefront, I've only got 1, and then we've got 2 session hosts and 2 delivery controllers. So this is what we currently got in the environment. Active Directory is configured. This doesn't have any of the RDS roles on it. It's got the desktop experience installed. Just plain delivery controllers, plain, it's got the IIS roles installed, but that is it. There's nothing on there. There's nothing installed on the license server. So I've kicked the configuration off, and this is what we're going to end up with. So hopefully we're going to end up with an RDS licensing role and a Citrix licensing server installed and a Citrix license registered. We're going to have 2 delivery controllers. We're going to have storefront installed but not configured. And then we're going to have 2 RDS session hosts. So it's going to install the RDS session host role. Obviously that involves reboots as the desktop experience, and you can install the VDA, and that requires reboots and all that sort of stuff. And it's going to configure these machines to register with the delivery controller. It's going to create a manual broker catalog, and then create a delivery group and assign some users to it. That's hopefully what's going to happen. Yeah. So
you'll register licenses as well?
Sorry?
You'll register licenses as well?
Yeah, in the configuration which I show you, you can point it to you can tell it where the license file is, and of course, because we can break out the environmental configuration, you can say, these are my license server for this environment, this is my license server for that environment. And when you update the configuration document and redeploy your environment, it'll just pull the relevant information. Okay. Where's it? Do you want a beer? No? Doing well, aren't I? I'm going to be drunk. So let's have a quick look at one of these configuration documents quickly that we've kicked off. So let's have a look at the simple DSC configuration. So here is a standard configuration document. This is PowerShell authored. This isn't what gets applied. This isn't a MOF file. But here we are defining a declarative configuration for our environment. So here we are saying, I want to make sure that there's a file or a directory present in this case. And I can tell it that, it's a file resource, I want a directory, this is the path I want, and I want to ensure that it's present. If that doesn't exist, then it's going to create it. If somebody deletes that folder, it's going to recreate it. And then we could have, make sure the Windows Update service is running, and then install the RDS server role. Notice that we can have some dependencies on the order in which this stuff is applied. That is a very, very simple configuration document. It's just an example. It's not what I've deployed at all. But we can define here exactly what we want. Yes, Jim?
So I see it's got a PS1 extension. Mm-hmm. You said it's just a text file. Obviously a PS1 batch file is just a text file, right? But
this isn't the MOF file.
Yeah, I know, but so why is that a PowerShell file? Because
when we run this configuration, it's going to generate for each computer that we specify, it's going to generate a MOF file for each of those computers, which can then be applied to those machines. Yeah, it's a question.
Can you actually include a file in the MOF?
No.
A file or binary?
No, so in the example that I'll show you, we can define in our configuration, we can say go and pull or download this file from over here, whether that's via HTTP, HTTPS, or whether it's over SMB or whatever it happens to be. But yeah, I'll show you how some of that works. Yeah. So that's a simple configuration.
So, Ian,
yes.
Would it be great if somebody in the community would write some kind of editor that would make creating these config files very easy, complete services when you type it?
Yeah. Well, volunteered.
No, I'm trying to volunteer. So you volunteered.
No, I think you just volunteered.
Well, look,
so I can be able to one?
Notepad++, right? Create a plugin, here you go.
Yeah, I did. So, you know, this is the PowerShell authoring experience, not this one, but, you know, that authoring experience can be done in PowerShell. When we run the configuration, it generates the configuration documents. Those configuration documents could be generated by Chef's DSL, so the Chef's domain-specific language for their configuration management product, you know, whether it's, you know, Ansible, Salt, whatever it happens to be. And they can come from anywhere. This is, what you're seeing here is the PowerShell experience of authoring that configuration document. So let's have a look at the complete one. And this is quite a complicated one on the face of it. So here we have some environmental configuration. So this is that, me splitting my environmental configuration out. So this is the actual lab configuration that I'm deploying. So here I'm defining my nodes and the roles that I want them to have installed. Fairly straightforward. And then the non-node data here is just configuration data that I'm supplying to my configuration, where I define what I want my XenDesktop site to be called, what machine catalogs I want, what delivery groups I want. And the implementation here is by these new Dsc resources that have been made available. This isn't native Citrix or anything. So this is my configuration data. So this is my configuration document. So if I wanted to have 100 session hosts, I could just add in additional nodes, and that's just going to generate additional MOF files for each of those nodes I apply. In that scenario, I'd probably have a pull configuration. I have one configuration that says I want all my 100 machines to look like this one configuration, rather than generating configuration after configuration. So this is my environmental information. The actual bit that's doing the DSC configuration is this sort of stuff here. So I'm saying, in my configuration, any machine or any node that's flagged with the licensing role, I want it to have this Windows feature installed, this one, I want to install this Citrix XenDesktop 7 feature, which is one of the new resources, so I want to install a licensing role, and here's my license file, and I tell it where the source path is. Yeah? So the file resource can then, I can say, I want this file present on my machine, guess what, that's the way to see where it's going to put it, and if I can specify the source of that in my configuration. So that's for my licensing role, and then what happens with the XenDesktop delivery controllers. So here is, you can see, configuration of the CredSSP. I need to configure CredSSP with PowerShell 1, because I'm going to go out of the machine and back in, and then go off to the database server or wherever I need to go. So I'm going to install the delivery controller. I want to install an SSL certificate. Yeah, I want to register that SSL certificate. Yeah, and then down here, I'm going to pick the first node in my configuration as a controller. Obviously, I don't want to try and create a XenDesktop site on all my delivery controller machines. So in here, it's then going to go and create a site database, monitor database, logging database, and it's going to try and create a site. And all of the data that it needs is coming from that configuration file. So I have one configuration, but my environmental information can be applied from elsewhere. Question?
So if I'm troubleshooting a problem with my environment's configured by DSC, how often does it check to reset the configuration to what the DSC is? Because if I go and say, actually, I'm troubleshooting and I'm going to, by PowerShell, in the GUI, whatever, change something, test it, is DSC going to change it back in the background in 1 second or 5 minutes or 10 minutes or 30 minutes?
Yeah. So you could configure this. So there are various modes for the local configuration manager. So you can set it into an apply only mode. So you apply the configuration and that's it. After it's applied it just stops. There's an apply monitor, so it'll apply the configuration, and then after that, if it drifts, it's going to run a consistency check. But if it's if it's a drift of its configuration, it's just going to log that, and then you got the apply and auto correct, which says, well, if it changes, go and put it back. And you can configure how often that cycle occurs. By default, it's going to run every 15 minutes. That consistency check is every 15 minutes. In PowerShell 1, it's done by a scheduled task. They got rid of that in PowerShell version 2. It's got a bit more. So, let's see this. So in here, I'm just looking at this, running Windows 10. This is a access denied. You've got to love it, haven't you? So I only want to view the configuration. So this is running obviously Windows 10, and in here includes PowerShell version 5. So if I do a get DSC local configuration manager, this will give me all the configuration. And this is version 5 specific stuff, right? So here's that mode, apply and monitor, frequency minutes 15. Notice that we can in V5, you've got this partial configuration, so I can have multiple configuration documents coming from different sources. Yes, question?
Yeah, just relating that, so you can have multiple configurations.
In version 5?
Yeah, and one of them can be in apply and monitor mode.
Yeah, one can be in
another
push mode. Yeah.
And another small one. Is it true that PowerShell remoting is required even if everything is applied locally?
No,
No?
it's not true. You don't need PowerShell remote. Not in the remoting sense.
Okay.
So, yeah. You don't need to have PowerShell remoting enabled by default for this to work.
How does it work in Linux?
How does it work on Linux? Well, obviously the AMI resources are made available. You need to download them, build them, and all that sort of stuff. But again, you need to drop a configuration, a MOF document on there, and the Linux-based machine will apply whatever that configuration is. There are different resources for Linux. But you can author that in PowerShell, you know, that configure and generate that MOF file, and then drop it to the Linux box. I think in the next implementation of the Linux-based local configuration manager, it's actually going to be able to work in pull mode as well. So currently today is push, you've got to push the configuration. With the updates that are coming, you can configure it to pull.
And I was real quickly reading a document that was talking about the differences between SCCM and this. And SCCM can actually do Apple or Mac's managing. This apparently can't.
No, not currently. Although it's open source, right? So if you go compile it for BSD effectively, then in theory you can get it to work. Yeah, it's quite minute whether it comes, you know, a bit later on. But this isn't really a client. I don't think not this current implementation is a client-based solution. Really, it's more about managing servers. It's not to say you can't use it to manage clients, but I think there are so many holes in it still that it's not really, how are you going to push those configurations out to 15,000 machines if you don't have SCCM? You're not going to configure, you don't necessarily have one configuration that configures 15,000 endpoints. So configuring in a pull mode might be quite different. So let's have a quick look at our lab then. Let's have a look, see whether this is being deployed. I should have showed you that the VMs had nothing on them to begin with. So I'm just going to check. Here, there is running out of time, but there is some composite resources which makes the configuration look a bit simpler. So that configuration you saw earlier, you can author what are called composite resources. So now my licensing configuration looks like this. So I've created a composite resource, which is just a PowerShell, effectively a PowerShell function that I can then, rather than specifying each of those individual resources, I can just say, I want a license server and these are my things I need. And so this configuration document is significantly shorter. Here's I want first site controllers based on site. So in here is my configuration information. And then I'm creating a machine catalog that's going to add those IDS notices. So feel free to come and ask me questions afterwards. So let's have a look. So I've configured. I'll kick that off. Let me make sure that the configuration's finished. So here I'm just testing configuration. It's still running on a couple of machines by the looks of things. So storefront, one of the session hosted license servers finished. I was hoping it would have finished before now. So it will finish. Let's just have a quick look. So in here, how do you speed up? Yeah, so here I'm just showing you that all the VMs are empty. These are the exact same VMs. I took this on before I come out on this lab. So this will work. Here's my configuration document. I'm going to generate that configuration and push it out. Yeah, it's running. And then there's a whole load of waiting, right? So this is the bit that we're currently waiting for here. So I think there's 4 minutes. It's 8 minutes. Let's take that. So I'm just testing the configuration here, which is what I just did. Yeah. What you will notice is that these nodes will start rebooting in a minute. So just waiting for the configuration to apply, because it's eventually consistent, right? It's going to apply that document, it might have to reboot, and then it's going to reboot, run through that document again and keep going. So a lot of waiting. It's now finished. I know it's finished because there's no red text. So this is just returning that they're all true. One of them will return a warning due to the fact I'm using their BIOS domain, not for the qualified domain name. Yeah, after that's done, I then have to manually configure storefront. So here I'm running the initial storefront configuration scripts the Citrix provide. This is, storefront is installed, this is just configuring storefront. And it's only because I haven't got around to automating that with DSC at the moment in time. So, there you go, there's that script, that's finished. And now I'm firing up, there we go, I'm on the store web. So storefront, obviously there's a script's been created. It's configured using SSL, so the certificate's been installed. I'm going to log in, and hopefully, you're going to see it. There's a desktop catalog, a machine catalog, and desktop group, and all sorts of screens.
So this seems unbelievably scalable, because if, as long as you've got the MOF file and the LCM, it doesn't matter. You're not dependent on any common resources.
There are the DSC resources which need to be on the box. So the LCM, is going to apply whatever resources you've got in your configuration document. Now there are some built in.
Okay.
How you deploy them is up to you, but the standard mode is you configure it in pull mode, and it will go to an internal pull server and download the resources.
But it's essentially it's self-contained, right?
Yes.
You pull in files and other kinds of stuff, but it's essentially self-contained on a per machine basis.
Yeah.
Which means that who cares how many you've got, right?
Well, indeed, it's that whole DevOps treat stuff like cattle, not pets or sheep or something like that. So they say, yeah.
That's very cool, though.
So, I mean, obviously, directors installed, directors configured, all that sort of stuff. Yeah.
Can you undo it? Like record previous state and undo it?
Well, it all comes down to that, how do you version control and manage that configuration document?
Yeah, you need to create an undo file. There's no other.
Yeah, so if you wanted to reverse something, then yes, you would need to explicitly define that. The whole configuration document management stuff that's big in the big web companies, the unicorns or whatever it is that they are, they're talking about deploying, where Docker's big and that containerization stuff, is because they're deploying hundreds of thousands of servers. Is this going to be used inside, our traditional enterprise environments? I don't know is the answer to that. I don't see it, not for a little while. I've got some customers who don't know what command line is, let alone, PowerShell is and what the configuration document is and how you're going to manage it. It's good for some things, but apparently I'm out of time. Any questions? Thank you for listening, and hopefully you found it useful. If you've got any questions, come find me afterwards. That lab environment's probably finished now, so thank you very much.